They speak of my sons, the primarchs. They are the grand tragedies, the star-crowned cornerstones of this fallen age. They were demigods, forged to conquer the galaxy in my name, each a facet of my own being, amplified and perfected for a specific, glorious purpose. Guilliman, the empire builder, Sanguinius, the shining hope, Magnus, the seeker of forbidden truths, Dawn, the unbreachable fortress, Horus, my most beloved, the war master, the vessel of my grandest ambitions and my most profound failure. They were epics, grand, sprawling poems of potential and ruin, their triumphs and betrayals echoing through the millennia, shaping the very fabric of this imperium. They were, and are, the pillars upon which this galaxy is saved or damned. But you ask of Sigismund. To speak of Sigismund is to speak of something different, not an epic, but a sonnet, not a fortress, but a blade. My primarchs were the grand strategies, the architects of entire crusades, the kings of 1,000,000 worlds. Sigismund was the singular perfect expression of the crusade's purpose, distilled into the flesh of one man. If my sons were the hands that would shape the galaxy, Sigismund was the sword I intended them to wield. And what a sword he was, the most perfect I have ever known. I remember his genesis, not in the gene labs of Luna, where I wrought my demigods from the stolen fire of the warp, but on the irradiated plains of post-unification Terra. He was of the old blood, a true son of Earth. In the raw material of his being, there was an obstinacy, a grit, a furious and unyielding belief that was the hallmark of humanity at its most pure. There was no grand, esoteric destiny woven into his soul, no shard of my own psychic might. There was only rock and fire and faith, not faith in a god. He knew the imperial truth. His was a faith in the tangible, in his chainsword, in his battleplate, in his brothers, and above all, in the righteous, secular cause of mankind's dominion over the stars. It was a simple, uncomplicated, and therefore unbreakable creed. While my other sons and their progeny wrestled with philosophy, with their place in the cosmos, with the temptations of pride and the whispers from the Empyrean, Sigismund had but one question. Where is the enemy? Rogel Dawn, my Praetorian, found him. And in the son, the father saw the perfect tool. Dawn, ever the builder, the master of static defense and inviolable principles, saw in Sigismund the dynamic, irresistible force that his legion needed. He was the tip of the 7th Legion's spear, the point of the phalanx. Where Dawn was the shield of the Imperium, Sigismund was its vengeful sword. I watched him. I watched them all in those golden years of the Great Crusade. I saw him on 100 worlds, a whirlwind of imperial yellow, his blade a blur of black. I saw him cut down orc war bosses, whose physical might rivaled that of my own sons. I saw him stand against the psychic horrors of the diasporex, his simple burning belief a ward more potent than any psyker's shield. He did not understand the warp. He did not need to. He knew only that it was the enemy, and the enemy must be purged. There was a purity in his violence. Others found art in it, or glory, or a grim necessity. For Sigismund, battle was a form of prayer. Each swing of his black sword was an affirmation of his loyalty. Each enemy slain was a testament to the Emperor's light. He was not the most skilled swordsman in the galaxy. That art belonged to many, Sanguinius, Fulgrim, the Lion. But Sigismund was the most lethal, He did not fight to display mastery. He fought to kill. He stripped the art of combat down to its most brutal and effective core, the absolute, unrelenting commitment to the death of the foe. That was why I named him my champion. The title was not a mere honorific. It was a declaration. In an age of demigods, I chose a mortal man to be the ultimate arbiter of my will in single combat. I gave him the black sword, a weapon that held a sliver of that cold, definitive finality that is my own essence. It was a symbol to the entire Imperium. It said, "This is what a man can be. Not a primarch, not a demigod, but a man. Focused, loyal, indomitable. He was the attainable ideal. He was the proof of my imperial truth, made manifest in flesh, blood, and ceramite. And then the dream died. Horus fell. The galaxy burned. The Horus heresy was a test of faith unlike any other. It broke legions. It sundered brotherhoods. It turned my sons against me and against one another. It was a tempest of lies, half-truths, and demonic temptation. It preyed on pride, on ambition, on love, on every complex motivation that drove my Astartes. It could not touch Sigismund. Where others saw nuance and debated loyalties, Sigismund saw only the enemy. His simple, brutal calculus remained unchanged. Horus had betrayed the emperor. The sons of Horus were traitors. They were the enemy. They must be purged. There was no room for doubt in his soul, no crack for the lies of chaos to find purchase. His rage was not the wild, self-destructive fire of Angron. It was a forge, cold, controlled, and utterly focused. It was the righteous fury of the betrayed, and it made him magnificent. I remember the Battle of Terra. From my throne, fighting a war on a scale no mortal mind can comprehend, I could still feel him. A single burning point of white-hot loyalty amidst a sea of terror and betrayal. While Dawn organized the macro strategy of the defense, Sigismund led the bloody reality of it in the trenches and on the walls. He was everywhere. He was the angel of death to the traitorous hordes, a figure of mythic terror, even to his fallen brothers. He sought out their champions. He craved it. Not for glory, but for purpose. He was a sword, and a sword must be tested against other blades. I feel the psychic echo of his duel with Khan of the World Eaters, a clash of titans, the controlled, righteous fury of the Emperor's champion against the nascent, blood-mad rage of the corpse god's berserker. It was a microcosm of the entire war, faith against fanaticism, purpose against psychosis. Sigismund was wounded, but he was victorious. He cast Khan down, a symbol that for all its fury, the madness of chaos could not overcome the sheer, unyielding will of a true believer. He sought out their champions. He craved it, not for glory, but for purpose. He was a sword, and a sword must be tested against other blades. I feel the psychic echo of his duel with Khan of the World Eaters. A clash of titans, the controlled, righteous fury of the Emperor's champion against the nascent, blood-mad rage of the blood god's berserker. It was a microcosm of the entire war, faith against fanaticism, purpose against psychosis. Sigismund was wounded, but he was victorious. He cast Khan down, a symbol that for all its fury, the madness of chaos could not overcome the sheer, unyielding will of a true believer. He never wavered, not once. When the walls fell, when hope seemed lost, when even Dawn's stoicism was cracked by the strain of the siege, Sigismund's fire only burned brighter. His grief was profound. The loss of his brothers, the ruin of all he had fought for. It would have broken a lesser man. For Sigismund, it was simply more fuel. He channeled that grief, that loss, that rage into the edge of his sword. Then came the end, the vengeful spirit, Sanguinius's death, my own fall, the shriek of Horus's soul as I obliterated it from existence. The war was over. But for Sigismund, the war had just begun. This, perhaps, is the truest measure of his perfection as a weapon. A tool designed for a singular purpose often becomes useless when that purpose is gone. But Sigismund, he refused to be put aside. He saw the truth that even Guilliman, in his grief and pragmatism, took time to grasp. He knew the enemy was not truly vanquished. The traitors had fled, but they were not destroyed. The galaxy was not saved, merely granted a stay of execution. He looked at the Imperium we had saved, a ruin, a graveyard of dreams, presided over by a silent, broken father upon a golden throne. And he did not despair. He saw only the next phase of the war, the long war. He rejected the Codex Astartes. He rejected the peace. To him, such things were a betrayal of the Emperor's ultimate sacrifice. How could they lay down their arms and build empires when the enemy still drew breath? How could they divide their legions when the galaxy was more dangerous than ever? So he founded the Black Templars. He took his unyielding zeal, his crusading spirit, his absolute refusal to compromise, and he unleashed it upon the galaxy. He created a legion in his own image. Not builders, not administrators, not politicians. He forged a legion of swords, each one as sharp and single-minded as himself. An eternal crusade to never cease, to never yield, to purge the galaxy of my enemies until the very stars grew cold. It was a monstrous, beautiful, and utterly necessary thing. He took the shattered remnants of my dream, and from them he forged an eternal weapon to guard the ashes. For the better part of a millennium, his crusade burned. A man, sustained by the artifice of his Astartes physiology, but more so by the sheer, implacable force of his will. He grew old. The fire in his eyes never dimmed, but the flesh began to fail. He was an ancient thing by the time of the First Black Crusade, a living relic of an age of gods and monsters. And he met his end as a sword must. He met Abaddon, the despoiler, the heir to all of Horus's failure and hatred, the war master of chaos. I witnessed that final duel. A ghost in the machine. I see all such moments of consequence. I saw my ancient champion, his body weary with a millennium of ceaseless war, stand against the chosen of the four gods, empowered by the warp and burning with the fury of centuries in exile. It was not a fair fight. It was never meant to be. Sigismund was old. Abaddon was in his prime, a conduit for damnation itself. But Sigismund did not fight for victory. He had seen the board. He knew the strategic reality. He fought for one last perfect purpose. He fought to wound, to prove a point, to deliver a message. He allowed the talon of Horus to pierce his ancient armor, to tear into his flesh. And in that moment of seeming defeat, with the arrogance of the despoiler laid bare, my old sword thrust true. He drove the black sword through Abaddon's chest, a mortal wound that only the black arts of the warp could undo. He did not kill the monster, no, but he wounded him. He made the demigod bleed. He proved that the new darkness could be met and hurt by the old light, and his final words, whispered with the last of his breath, a curse and a prophecy that has haunted the despoiler for 10 millennia. You will die as your weakling father died, soulless, honorless, weeping and alone. He drove a sliver of truth into the despoiler's black heart, a shard of fear. He lost the duel, but he won the last battle of his long war. He died as he lived, a weapon spent in a final, perfect, meaningful strike. So you see, Sigismund was not a son in the way the primarchs were. He was something more and something less. He was the perfect creation, a living weapon forged of the most fundamental, most powerful material in the cosmos, human belief. He was my champion. He was my wrath. He was the vengeful ghost of the great crusade, and his echo still rings across the stars in the battle cries of his Templar sons. They are his legacy. 1,000,000 black-armored swords scattered across the galaxy, each one a testament to his simple, terrible, and perfect creed. No pity, no remorse, no fear.